we have a roll call.
Miss Harris,
Here.
Miss Allard,
Here.
Miss Beck,
Here.
Miss Crane, Mr. Harris,
Here.
Miss Kemper,
Here.
Miss Peel,
Here.
Mr. Pusateri,
Here.
and Mr. Rippey.
All right, do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Thank you. I would like to make one announcement under the announcement section. First, we do not have anyone for the public comment period for today, but I would also like to ask everyone, when you speak, please speak directly into the mic because they still cannot hear you very well when they're taking notes and things of that sort. So please make sure you are directly in front of the mic when you speak. All right, let's move on with our meeting. Do we have any committee reports today? All right, if we don't have any committee reports, we'll move on to the approval of our minutes. Now, we had a regular board meeting that was held on July 21st, 2026. May I have a motion to approve? So moved. May I have a second? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Moving on to our next minutes. We had the annual board meeting that was also held on July 21st, 2026. May I have a motion to approve? So moved. May I have a second? Second. All right. All those in favor say aye. 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 All right, our minutes are now approved. Moving on to our resolutions. Resolution 5A. Authorization to enter into contract with HMB Professional Engineers to provide archaeological services for Doster Manor. May I have a motion, please? May I have a second? Second. All right, it's been motioned and second, ready for discussion. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Pam Bischoff, Director of Strategic Initiatives. This resolution is related to pre-demolition work that is taking place at Dosker Manor. As part of our application, our environmental review process, the State Historic Preservation Office gets to weigh in on whether or not the building that we're proposing to demolish is eligible for placement on the National Historic Register. During our environmental review of the Dosker Manor property, the State Historic Preservation Office, or the SHPO, did determine that this property is eligible to be placed on the National Historic Register. This requires us as an agency to go through a series of steps to investigate the potential of discovery of historic artifacts that would be of interest to the community and the history of the site. So thus far, we have completed with HMB Architects they have been a subcontractor under our annual architects contract, which has ended. So this is kind of why we're here, because we need to continue to do this work, but they would no longer be available to us under that annual architectural contract. So just a brief description of what they've done so far. They have completed what is called a phase 1 archaeological survey, which consisted of a lot of research, looking at old maps, we call the sandboard maps, and seeing what was on the site previously, and determining where to do some preliminary archaeological investigation. That has been completed and consisted of some kind of shallow digging at various locations on the Dosker Manor site. And they did find some artifacts of interest, several privies, some building foundations, some pottery, an Edison light bulb with an intact filament, which was deemed to be very fascinating. But in any case, they did find enough. There is a threshold to move us into further phases of archaeological investigation. They also produced an extensive report as part of this process and submitted to the SHPO a phase 1 mitigation plan. has been verbally approved, and we're waiting on the official sign off from the SHPO, but we fully expect them to approve that plan. We're now at a point where we're kind of halfway through this process. So we know we're going to have to continue to do what's called a phase 3. We've been allowed to skip over a phase 2, which, is a savings of around $123,000, not having to do that and jump straight to this more intense phase of investigation that we would have had to do anyway. But we do have to do that. Because our, architect's contract has expired, we would have to procure these services. However, we do believe, given the extenuating circumstances here, that we have well-documented justification for sole source procurement in this case. Those justifications are outlined in the resolution. HMB completed all of the background research in phase 1 investigation. The archaeologists possess unique knowledge of the site's history, the field conditions, excavation records, artifact inventories, mapping, and research methodology. This familiarity would enable HMB to efficiently continue the work without requiring another consultant to repeat all of this background research, essentially. Review extensive documentation or duplicate portions of earlier investigations. In addition, any delay of our movement towards demolition of these 3 structures is unacceptable. We must get those buildings down by the end of 2028, or we miss critical deadlines related to our funding, and we could put at risk our bond set aside with KHC. So we must do this work. We did work extensively with HMB to narrow the scope of their investigation to a point that would be still acceptable to KHC. The estimated cost of the work is, we're asking for a not to exceed amount of $430,000. We've consulted with Louisville Metro government, and the good news is these activities are eligible as an expense under our Community Development Block Grant Award for demolition at Oscar Manor. So we have $1.5 million in CDBG funds. This up to 430 would be eligible to come out of that. The initial estimates we received from this work from HMB exceeded $700,000. So we did, a lot of back and forth and communication, not only with our archaeologists, but with the city's historic consultants and with the state, with the SHPO, to make sure that what we were proposing as a smaller scope would be acceptable to them. And I'm happy to take any questions.
What happened to the light bulb? Like, what do y'all do?
Okay, great question. So part of the phase 3 is that they're going to dig deeper. So they have like 5 different locations. These privies are, essentially what we would think of in our homes today as our trash and our toilet. There was no citywide trash service at the time. So anything in your home you wanted to discard, you just toss it in the privy. So, but all of these artifacts, at the end of the day, they will take and discard some duplicates. But we're estimating, I think, around 20 boxes of artifacts that must be cleaned, cataloged, and archived at an approved facility. In our case, that is U of L. And there's a cost associated with that too. That's included in this 400.
That's a cost. I would think that they would pay us, but that's okay.
Then if we would like to access those again for research, you pay to.
Okay, I do have one question concerning the sole source. Even though I know that you all did that according to the CFR 200, when it comes to sole sources, to what I used to remember, and I've been out of this for a while, is that it had to be like basically the only folks that could possibly do the work, right? Or that they had a certain type of professional identification to do this type of work, and there's no one else in the general vicinity that could possibly do it, or things like that. So is that what we're saying our total basis is on? It's just
No.
the fact that they are totally specialized in this particular area.
So they are not the only archaeological firm in the city,
Okay.
but they are the only archaeological firm that has worked on a specific project. So that's part of it, is
Okay.
that we're halfway through this and they now possess a unique set of knowledge that if we started over with another firm, we would have to essentially pay for the vast majority of that again. And would also cost, and then there's also a delay. So procurement would cause a significant delay in completing the work. I just want to say that, and I'll let Benjamin kind of pipe in on anything I'm missing, and Eric, but this is, we will most certainly have to do SHPO, like the Section 106 process in the future at other sites. But we are not requesting that this procurement cover any other project other than to finish this process at Doster Manor.
Yes. Because I'm a little concerned when we make a sole source determination, and this is just because I've been in finance for years, is sometimes the funding source will come back and say, well, we didn't say that it
Mhm.
qualified as a sole source.
Mhm.
Is this something that we have to run by them, or is it just under a specific threshold where we would not? Because we're only looking at 430,000.
Sure. So we did discuss that with the city, the fact that we were bringing this to the board under sole source, and that we have documented our reasoning, including a legal opinion from our general counsel. And they have requested copies of that documentation, including this resolution, if it's approved. And then they would have a copy of the contract as well. And they have said that that would be acceptable. And there's no other funding source involved in this.
Beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I feel better now.
Okay.
All right. That's my only question. Does anyone else have any other questions? Comments? All right, we're ready for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Resolution 5A is now approved. Moving on to Resolution 5B, authorization to submit 400 and 420 South 8th Street to the Housing and Urban Development Rental Assistance Demonstration Program. HUD, RAD, for disposition approval.
Very good.
That was a lot. All right, may I have a motion, please? May I have a second?
Second.
All right, it's been motion and second, ready for discussion.
So you all, most of you in this room will probably be having a bit of a sense of deja vu right now. So we had previously brought a very similar resolution to this to you all to approve us to move forward with the disposition of this property. We jumped the gun a bit in the whole application process to RAD by doing that. That's not a problem, except we just need to bring this to you and have something that is dated at the appropriate time, which I'll kind of run through what's happened since. I'm not going to go back over everything about this project because I think you all are, have been very well informed. But we have had hit some milestones, which is why we're ready to come back and have this all wrapped up and tied with a bow with you all today. Earlier this year, we did receive the commitment from KHC for the bonds, tax exempt bonds, to help fund this rehabilitation. And then in February of this year, the board approved the selection of MDG Real Estate as our co-developer partner for the substantial rehab. We have started our resident participation in the RAD process. So we had to start that prior to submitting our initial application to the RAD office. And so we held 2 resident meetings, and we distributed these HUD-approved notices to residents that outline their rights during this process, including the right to remain or the right to return to a rehabilitated unit. So we've had multiple discussions with residents. After those 2 meetings occurred and that communication was distributed, then we were able to kind of submit this pre-application to HUD. Just last week, we received what is called a CHAP, which is HUD's commitment to enter into a housing assistance payment for this conversion. So they're saying you've met all the initial criteria to proceed with this process. And then there are several steps, continued down the road to complete this. And so at this point, we have received our support letter from the mayor. And then now we're coming to you with this updated resolution so that we can move forward with submitting all of the remaining documentation, application materials to HUD to receive the commitment for the conversion. This conversion will take the property off of the Section 9 public housing platform and into what we call into the Section 8 program through a blended rent process. And so that's where we have a few more acronyms in the resolution than probably the previous one. So it's a combination of Section 18 and RAD rents to get us at the highest possible rent level to support the operations of the new development after the rehab.
All right, are there any questions? Comments?
So is the update here that this is just dated differently, or this is to the RAD office as opposed to the SAC?
I believe that the initial application also said RAD in the narrative, but it wasn't in the title of
Okay.
the,
This is a very technical update.
Yes.
What they've already approved.
correct. And I remember it.
Anyone else? All right, ready for the vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, resolution 5B is now approved. Moving on to resolution 5C, authorization for renewal of elevator maintenance service contract. May I have a motion, please? May I have a second? All right, it's been moved and seconded. Don't forget, you all, I need y'all to speak directly into those mics or talk as loud as I am.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you so much.
Good
Ready for
afternoon.
discussion. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Doing well.
Eric Proctor, Deputy Executive Director of Operations. So this is to enter into a 2-year term with Oracle, who is our current elevator provider. You all are provided the resolutions in advance. I would like to highlight the second whereas. Last month, less than a month ago, myself and other members of my team met with Oracle, knowing that their current contract was coming to an end, to discuss some ongoing issues and discuss how we wanted to move forward. We came away from that meeting, obviously recommending to continue to work with Oracle. They have a very intimate knowledge of our elevators. And part of that meeting was that when you all fix something, we have to be on the same page about what is warranted with that work every single time. And some of that communication was something that LMHA needed to shore up internally, which we have done. And so with that understanding and with Oracle's excellent history of emergency responsiveness, they are really good about that. We discussed, worked through some issues, and we strategically sourced, working off the state contract. We're asking you to approve us to piggyback off that state contract with an amount not to exceed $300,000. That is a tick above what we spent last year. And we do have a major repair at Lord's Hall, which is a 1 elevator site. And so, with some elderly residents with disabilities. We've already got the pricing for that. We are going to do that. I love to, I hope you all recognize, I love to bring these with a lower not to exceed than the previous year. This one is basically equal, and that's because we know we have a fairly big project coming up. As for the state contract, we received their same pricing, which is favorable to us. The more elevators you have, the better pricing you get from Oracle. We don't have nearly as many as the contract that we're piggybacking off of, but we do get that same pricing. So happy to answer any questions y'all may have. With the ongoing issues with. Now, it was primarily related to communication. Excuse me.
The question,
Ms. Beck,
can you repeat your question in the microphone?
I was just asking you to share more about the ongoing issues that were discussed.
So primarily was that communication about, once you've all fixed something once, and then something happens and you come back out, what is that warranty? What is that warranty term? And then also issues about who's ultimately responsible for meeting with the technician and working through that, which again, some of these issues were internal with LMHA that we've since shored up, which is the communication of this repair is being suggested, and then how that flows up to get the ultimate approval. And then this is outside the scope of the ongoing emergency. We're obviously just going to fix that as soon as we can. The other one, and I've stressed this with a lot of our contractors recently, is we never need a Cadillac. We always need a Chevy. We're a public housing authority, right? So there's elevators that have fancy elevator stuff, you know, we don't ever need that. We need our elevators to work. And so, again, when a technician comes out and they want, I don't want to hear any more about this verbatim what I'm saying. I don't want to hear any more about buttons and flashing lights. We need to be able to hit the button and the thing go to the floor it needs to go to. So primarily that communication about what is warranted and for how long as soon as the work is done. And then in addition to that, the necessity to not have any bells and whistles that aren't necessary to make the equipment operate.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious if any of those issues were more resident impact.
Well, I mean, you know, our elevators get used a lot. And I would think that for most of our high rises, if they were constructed today, they would have more elevators than they have. So we also have, and this doesn't have much to do with this contract, but we're putting up signs to say, don't hold them open for more than 2 seconds. We're, you know, any type of preventative maintenance, you know, that's something we stress as well. And so making sure that we know when they're coming for their regularly scheduled maintenance, which is the $61,200 portion of this contract, and everything else is an hourly cost of anticipated repairs outside the standard maintenance. Yep, you're welcome. Yes. Okay, so something that I've worked with Benjamin and my team on is if we can get a termination for convenience into any contract, there's no, the value of the 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, all it does is make us come to you all and ask every single year to enter into a contract. When, if we can get out of it without any right to cure, without any right of first refusal, then it just, it for administrative purposes, you know, allows us to, you know, proceed on with the contract, without having to come and seek renewal, from you. And, you know, we manage our contracts better these days. So we always make sure we get that termination for convenience in the contract as we're managing. If it's not working out, we cut ties, and then we would come back, obviously, to enter into a contract with someone else. But the regulations prohibit any contract length of longer than 5 years. The 1 year with 4 subsequent 1-year renewals is something we just historically have done that in my estimation and pragmatically has resulted in us missing deadlines for renewal, rushing competitive processes, bringing high performing contracts to you all for renewal. That if you want to, if you only want to renew for 1 year, that's fine. I'll bring it back next year, but it is. Okay, yeah. So we would never do this without the termination for convenience. In fact, if it's up to me, we would never enter any contract without termination for convenience. The days of the right to cure, and you need to give us this much time to fix, we're not doing that. We're managing our contracts, and we're going to be able to get out of them whenever we want, wipe our hands clean. So just in the interest of, for any reason you would want to settle something contractually for a longer span of time, that's why we're doing the 2 years with subsequent renewals.
Okay. On this one, Okay, I see the staff recommends A, because that was also something else of interest when we did a renewal, that at least there would have been a conversation with staff about like how this person or how this company is performing to make sure it was still a good fit. But if you say it's been a good fit, the other thing is, if is this 2 years at 300,000? You're asking 300,000 for each year, so it's 600,000 total.
It's not to exceed 300,000 in either of the 2 years.
Okay.
So let's say year one, we're butting up against 300,000. I'm gonna have to come back to you all and ask for more for that year and not say, oh, I got 3,000 over here. Does that make sense? And we met with Oracle, with our local sales rep, with the regional sales rep, some other Oracle person was there. And then we circled up internally afterward and how do we feel about this? And that's how we came to the above average rating.
Would there be an issue with funding? If you do a 2-year contract, do we get our money per annual, correct? Okay, so for this particular contract, if it is paid with funds that are approved annually, can you technically do a contract for a year that you have no funding for?
Well,
Well,
the budget will still have to come back to next year.
So yes, the budget will have to come back to us. But do we technically have the funding to contract? That's my question, I guess.
when it's posed as we do as a not to exceed, I like to think of, you all have said we could spend up to a certain amount, not that we are going to spend that certain amount. The budget, as Elizabeth mentioned, which you all would approve next fiscal year's budget, we would have a line item for elevator maintenance repairs. And then we would be constricted by that approved budget in addition to being constricted by the not to exceed amount. They're kind of two separate things, if that. So let's say next year we don't have any money, which that's not gonna happen, right? Okay, but let's say next year we are concerned that we could not spend $300,000 with the elevator company, that we have not budgeted that amount. We would, in operating in our budget and using our budgetary process, not spend in excess of an amount if it's lower than 300,000. So we're capped at either the budgeted amount or the not to exceed amount, whichever's higher, lower.
My only question, I guess my concern is if I don't have an approved budget for that second year, how can I go ahead and contract against it?
I mean, well, I mean, we have our historic funding to look at, right? So we certainly would, there's certain things, certain items that we would payroll, or lease the building, certain items that we simply need to count on an estimate of funding to come in future years, right? So if we, again, by approving a not to exceed amount, you are not approving $300,000 to count in a future budget. It is that we could go up to $300,000 kind of if the budget were to permit.
Isn't this,
Yeah, I like that.
isn't this the same we've been doing for the last 18 months I've been on the board, approving multi-year contracts? I mean,
Most.
is there something different?
The initial term is 2 years versus 1. Historically, we have brought in this type of contract, not in all, but in this type of contract, a 1-year initial term and 4 subsequent 1-year renewals. We're trying out, if you all approve, a 2-year initial term, and then you won't hear about elevators if everything goes well for two years from now.
Can we put something in there in the contract when we do a contract like this? And this is only because this is the first time I've heard of 2-year. Can we put something there according to budget?
Like subject to budget.
Subject to budget, yes. Yes, subject to budget
So
authority.
we do that, we use that language all the time, especially on the Section 8 side. So I mean, subject to budget authority, if it's not already in our contract, should be, I mean,
It would be a termination for convenience, or funding out or budget authority. Yeah, that, it's pretty boilerplate, that language.
That's in our boilerplate.
Yes.
Okay. Then I'm good.
it's understood that we won't pay.
We would also terminate for convenience if we weren't able to pay them anymore. So.
And the termination for convenience, thank you for explaining that. I think if we're gonna see multi-year contracts, like, you know, if this is gonna be a repeated pattern, it would be important to me to, again, that this needs to be expressed or like maybe in the justification as well, that because I'm pretty positive, like it was a while.
Yeah,
ago,
it's
like,
subject to budget authority, something like that. I mean, it's just to cover our bases. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean.
And I know this is more of like a price contract, what I would call a price contract. You request a service, you have up to $300,000 to spend, right? Because that contract goes up that high. I'm fine with that. You know, but it would be good to probably just say, just subject to budget authority. And I think I would be okay, completely okay.
Okay, and then the budget authority is ours, right? So the termination for convenience is kind of a catch-all, right? But certainly language very similar to that. Sometimes it says funding out, sometimes it says budget authority, sometimes it says both, is boilerplate in a lot of contracts. If they hand us the Oracle contract, we're gonna give an addendum that has, if that's not our language already is in there. The contract we're piggybacking off of has termination for convenience in it. And I would assume similar language to what you're speaking of, as it's a state contract. As for the multi-year, you better have a termination for convenience in there. That's a rule with us, and Benjamin would certainly agree with that, that internally we would never enter, like I said, hopefully into any contract, much less a multi-year contract without a termination for convenience.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Time for a vote. No, it's not my. All right, sorry.
All those in favor say aye. All those in favor of, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, budget, resolution 5C is now approved.
Thank you.
Resolution 5D, approval of amendment to the FY 2027 Move to Work, that's the MTW annual plan. May I have a motion, please? I need y'all to speak in the mic, please.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Ready for discussion?
Good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Coulter. I'm the HCD director. I'm presenting this plan for Lucretia, who could not be here today. I'm presenting item 5D, which is the proposed amendment to LMHA's FY 27 Move to Work Annual Plan. The FY 27 Move to Work Annual Plan was approved by the board on April 21st, 2026, and approved by HUD on July 1st, 2026. We're now asking the board to approve an amendment to that plan to make several changes to our existing MTW activities to take advantage of some additional flexibilities. I'm gonna walk through this. We have several, I apologize. We have several amendments to these, and I'll walk through these in order. The first activity is 2027-1, the alternative implementation schedule for reduced payment standards. Under HUD regulations, when payment standards are reduced, the reduction generally cannot be implemented any earlier than 2 years following the effective date of the decrease. Through this MTW activity, LMHA is requesting the authority to reduce that notification period to 30 days. The purpose of this flexibility is to allow LMHA to respond to more quickly when the payment standards reductions are necessary to protect the financial health of the agency. Most importantly, this activity would only be implemented when necessary to protect LMHA and preventing mitigation shortfall with the Housing Choice Voucher Program. The second activity is 2020-1 rent simplification. Under this proposal, LMHA would make several changes to the way the rent is calculated. First, we would change the rent calculation from 30% of adjusted gross in, or I'm sorry, adjusted income to 28% of gross income. This would eliminate various income deductions currently used in the rent calculation for public housing, HCV, and PBV boundaries. Second, for the HCV and PBV programs, we would change the initial leasing expense limitation from 40% of adjusted income to 43% of gross income. And third, we would eliminate public housing flat rates. It is important to note that households would continue to be able to request a reduction in rent at any time if they experience a reduction in their income. The third activity is 2022-1 MTW utility allowances. For this activity, LMHA is requesting the approval to use one of the two utility approaches. The first option would be to completely remove the utility allowance. The second option would be to implement a streamlined utility allowance schedule based on bedroom size under the proposed schedule, as you should see there. It's basically a $25 increment back to bedroom size. Again, this activity provides LMHA with the additional MTW flexibility in how our utilities are administered. And again, this is subject to some financial things that we'll talk about later. The next activity is 2007-1 streamlined recertification process. Under this proposed change, LMHA would conduct triannual recertifications for fixed income households in the HCV, PBV, and public housing programs. So when we say fixed income, we're talking about Social Security, VA income. Households with no income or those with only income sources of contributions would continue to be recertified annually. All other households would be recertified every 2 years. Households would be required to report increases in income only when their current income is either at zero or consists entirely of contributions. For verification purposes, LMHA would also accept documents that are no more than 180 days old when received by the agency. Currently, that's 120 days for reference. The next activity is 2020-2 streamlined flat rent. Because of this amendment proposes to eliminate public housing flat rents, this activity would be closed out. The next activity is 2020-5 gap financing. Under this change, LMHA may transition some or all of its ACV special referral partners away from a referral system and instead provide those partners with a direct grant. This gives LMHA additional flexibility in how we provide gap financing assistance through our special referral partners. The final activity is 2025-2 participant eligibility. LMHA is proposing to expand this activity to allow participants to transfer from our non-MTW programs into our MTW program without requiring them to be recertified again at the time of transfer. One of the specific purposes of this flexibility is to streamline the transition of our emergency housing vouchers into LMHA's MTW program. This is something that's important for us as HUD is ending our EHV funding, and this is a purpose for us to be able to move them quicker into a more stable funding source. This includes the proposed changes to our MTW activities. These amendments were made public for public comment from July 18th through August 17th, 2026, and LMHA held a public hearing on July 30, 2026. At this point, we have two options here. Either the board can approve or not approve. But finally, we want to address the primary reasons why we're bringing this to our board. LMHA anticipates entering shortfall in the calendar year 2026. Our projection is around November and December at this point. As a result, the agency needs to identify and implement cost savings and additional financial securities. The changes contained in this amendment provide LMHA and additional MTW tools that can allow us to manage our program and protect the financial health of the agency. Open to any questions. Yes, ma'am.
So the only one I have questions on is the elimination of flat rent in public housing. Are those people going to be moving to the same gross income system?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that supposed to be easier on you all? Is it supposed, like, what's the benefit to that?
So I'm not a public housing person, so I'll refer over here, but just to, from my understanding on that is basically the way flat rent works is a lot of people will select that when their income's going to exceed a certain amount. And so that allows them to pay less rent than it would be in the calculation. So us eliminating the flat rent really is eliminating the people with the most income receiving the more help than probably they should. Not-
That's right. So
Right,
these are for over income residents, residents whose income hits a certain threshold. You're placed on a flat rent system. So even if your income continues to go up, your rent's not going to go up. So arguably, we're subsidizing those households more because they're paying a low portion of their income towards rent. So this both puts everybody on the same standard, which it would be 28% gross income, which is simplifying how we do that business. And it's also ensuring that, either potentially we are getting more income for those units that are occupied by higher income residents, or those residents would choose to move on to a market unit, freeing up a public housing unit for somebody with less income. Does that make sense? So we're not sure if this would actually be, it would be, I think, administratively less burdensome than what we're currently doing. But we're not sure if it would actually increase resident income or tenant income, or if, I'm sorry, increase our rental income, or if it would change behavior for those renters so that we can free up public housing units, which is our safety net housing for people with lower income. Does that cover it? Do we feel like? Okay.
Number two, which was activity 2022-1. Says you're requesting approval to use one of the following utility allowance approaches. You're not asking us to pick the one to be approved. You're saying we want to have approval to use these down the road.
Yes. So that you all would be giving us the authority to submit this to HUD for their approval. So HUD would say you could do one of these two, whichever one you pick, or you can do either. And then we would use our financial outlook to choose which path we take. So as Jonathan said, we already made a bunch of changes to Section 8 to help lower our shortfall threshold, and we think that that's been enormously helpful. We started this process, this conversation with HUD, with them telling us we had one of the biggest shortfalls in the whole country, and our program is big, but it's not big enough to be the second largest shortfall in the country. So we have been able to shrink the projected shortfall there, but we got an email from HUD. They're projecting that as of December, we'd have a $2.8 million shortfall. We think it would actually be less because of the changes that you all approved several months ago. But by the end of this fiscal year, I think was HUD's latest projection. I don't want to misquote, but I think, are we thinking like 5.5 million would still be our shortfall even after all these changes? So that's our current projected shortfall for Section 8. Without this changes, without you all approving this, we would still have a $5.5 million shortfall in our richest subsidy program. That does not include shortfalls that we anticipate in the public housing program and in our central office cost center. So the goal of these changes would be to close the gap for the shortfall, so we don't have to terminate any Section 8 voucher rental assistance, and also to help build a little buffer for the rest of our agency so that we can make it through this next year. So if we are looking at things and the shortfall looks really dire based on the number of vouchers we have on our rolls, and if we're seeing continuing resolutions for HUD funding or lower Section 8 funding than we need, we would break glass and remove utility allowance. But if things turn out better, if we get more money from HUD than we anticipate, or if we have kind of the natural attrition in our Section 8 program to shrink it to a more manageable size for our budget, we would do the stepped utility allowance. Does that make sense? So eliminating utility allowance is like break glass in case of emergency, but I do think based on what I've seen come out of Washington, based on the size of our Section 8 program and our per unit costs, I do think we probably have to go that route. Unless something radically changes from the state.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that as well. It's difficult for me to like see the option based in it. I just feel like with a lot of the things that have been like cut in the past and things like that, it's almost like inevitable that it's going to be option A. And so like coming to the board with the final say on what that's gonna look like would be helpful. I feel like, because I've never seen like an option within a resolution like this. It's a little difficult to wrap my mind around, but I did have a question about activity number 20252 with the move to work program and transferring the housing choice voucher, emergency housing voucher over to the move to work. And I don't know if it was in the plan that was submitted online, but it talked about some sort of wait list for those participants. What does that look like?
So right now, currently, we have our EHV families, we're paying rent assistance on them. That funding is supposed to end September 30th of this year. We have been waiting for HUD guidance on, they were going to give us TPV vouchers, which is tenant protection vouchers on those. So we are honestly putting this into play just to give us the flexibility of us to be able to transfer them over to our ACV program if that's needed, if we get a delay on our TPV vouchers or anything like that. Again, this is just be able to, for us to assist those families more quickly and not have to make them go through a bunch of paperwork to make that transition.
Okay, so these people are already housed.
They're already housed, we're already paying rent assistance. And again, we want to be able to transition them over to our normal program without having them and their landlord to complete a bunch of paperwork. So we can manually just kind of do that behind the scenes and then go back and do anything that we need to do.
All right, and they'll still stay in their same unit, or
That
are
is
we
correct.
trying to get them out of the?
No, the thought process of this is they would remain in their current unit.
So functionally for the resident and the landlord, nothing will
Right.
change. This is just like a technical change that we would have to do for HUD, right? Like there's no new
Right, that's correct.
recertification. This funding for emergency housing vouchers was supposed to go until 2030. So this is a much shorter timeline than we all anticipated when PHA started issuing the emergency housing vouchers. So
So normally what happens is when you change program funding like that, you have to make the family recomplete their paperwork and completely recertify them, determine that they're income eligible and go through all these processes. What we're saying is we don't want to have to go through that process. We just want to be able to say, because you were on EHV, you now qualify for our normal ECV program and to make that transition.
And to your other question, the utility allowance change we anticipate would take effect next July, July 2027. So we would, right, isn't that right? So we would make that determination towards the end of this calendar year, and then start communicating early next year. So we will absolutely come back to you all if we have to do the elimination of the utility allowance.
Similar question for the timing of the impact for families in public housing going to the 28% gross. Is that at time of recertification or is it a 30-day notification?
Are we rolling that out in July also?
Yes, I believe so. I believe that was the intent and it would be at their recertification. We wouldn't just process everybody. So once we make that effective, it would be at their recertification.
But we wouldn't start that process until this would be approved by HUD, and we would have like clear communication that it's coming, like we did with the change in standard medical deduction. That was a recertification, right?
That is correct, yes.
So that's still kind of rolling out based on research.
Right, are there any other questions? Comments? All right, we're ready for the vote?
Meredith's got a question.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make one last comment. This is just because this was introduced in a public forum that I didn't get to make, but I did get some feedback on that. And it was just about like within the plan, it had added a lot of things when it came to like the special programs, voucher programs. And I think there was a lot of confusion on that. A lot of people were saying that was coming back, and below a lot of those sub paragraphs in the plan, it had mentioned like per the budget of LMHA. And so I don't know if that's like I just wanted to make that comment for it to like make a little more sense, I guess, within this plan, move to work plan. This is something that we're submitting, that we're making a resolution on to submit to HUD, right?
That is correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah, so we have to get your all's approval and then we submit it to HUD for their approval.
Okay.
Because they're gonna ask, did our board approve these changes?
But you're saying the special referral partners maybe need some updates to have in there. Yeah, we can do that. We obviously don't have the budget authority to reopen that program, but what we communicated in late 2024, when we paused the program based on our budget and to reconcile all of our records, we did say that if and when that program is reintroduced, it would look a little different. It would look like a COC, like a continuum of care referral as opposed to how it was before. And we also hope, we've heard from a lot of our special referral partners that use our vouchers on specific buildings, that they would prefer to be in our project-based voucher program. So we've also gotten a lot of feedback about how that program can work better for our partners. So it's a work in progress.
Are there any other questions? All right, we're gonna move on with the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, resolution 5D is now approved. Moving on to resolution 5E, approval of a new health insurance contract with Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield for calendar year 2027. May I have a motion, please? Please speak in the mic.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Ready for discussion?
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Bianco, the Deputy Executive Director of Finance. This resolution is to renew our annual group health insurance contract with Anthem. As many of you know, we use MMA, Marsh McLennan Agency, as our insurance broker. So they essentially negotiate on our behalf. They look at the market. They have the relationship with the different carriers, and then they come back to us with what they think makes the most sense for LMHA. So just going back, kind of setting the stage, starting with the fact that we're looking at a 5% increase on our rates this year. Just statewide, and this is from MMA's research, from what we're seeing so far is about 10% increase for Kentucky is what companies are experiencing. So not only is our 5% increase half of that, but that 10% or over is usually for companies who have normal amounts of high cost claimants, which we don't. Not to go too far back, but just to recap the last few years, in 2023, if you remember, our rates went up 15%. In 24, they went up 25. And then in 25, they went up another 20%, which all of these rate hikes were unprecedented. They all outpaced the market. And then last year, we obviously, we let the unionized employees have their own plan, which helped them. It also saved us a lot of dollars. And then we had just restructuring to what plans we had available, all of which saved us money. But the rates still basically stayed about even, right? It stayed about where it's at. So all that to say that 5% in this market with the high cost claimants that we have is very, very, very beneficial for LMHA. And just to kind of further drive home that point, and how good of a job, honestly, I think that MMA has done over these last few years. If you turn to the page that has the Marsh McLennan banner kind of going across the top, it's right after the rate page with the table. This small table with the redactions in the middle, this is just a rolling 12-month schedule showing our 5 highest cost claimants. Again, this is basically from July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026. And as you could see, the claims that we have for those rolling 12 months is over $2 million. The amount of premiums or revenue that Anthem expects to collect from us is $4.9 million for the year. So this is almost half of everything they're expecting to collect from us from just 5 people is what we're expecting. And it just goes more to show that even though we had all of the unionized workers remove and go to their own plan last year, none of them were in this high cost claimant group, which again saved us dollars for how much we were paying, but it also made it to where the ratio of high cost claimants to total participants, it actually got worse for us. So again, not to beat a dead horse, but for all of those reasons and more, 5% is actually almost a godsend for us in this environment right now. Is there any questions that you all have as far as, I know I put the rate table on there, and then if it was printed in color, if not, I can point them out, but there should be red font for the only things that actually changed as far as the deductibles. And the only changes were on the high deductible plan, the out of pocket and the normal deductibles went up like a few $100 on each one.
So the previous contract with the 4 renewals has expired, and you are asking for a 1-year contract?
Yep. So I'm glad you brought that up, because this is where this is going to be, again, and a little bit different. So when we entered into the first contract with Anthem that we have the standard 4 renewals for, that was prior to us having a broker. And so the RFP process, if you will, would have been different, because we would have actually been expected to, okay, now we're going to go and put this out for bid, review all of the different carriers, which, spoiler alert, there really was none that wanted to take us. But once in the middle of that we got with MMA as our broker, now they're basically taking care of that competitive process. Now they're negotiating, and I think I might have put it somewhere in here, but the only 2 other large carriers that would have been a consideration both declined to even give us a quote, which was United Healthcare and Cigna, I think. So that also makes it a little bit easier, I guess, because, you know, again, and I think Elizabeth might have mentioned it last year, but we've also tried to get onto the state plan, but because of these high cost claimants and the plans we had before, they said, no, thanks, but no, thanks. So that is why this is different. So I actually removed the renewal language out of here because of that. And then what it'll take form in, and then you all obviously let me know if you think something should be modified or you'd like to see it in a different way. But the way it'll work is that next month, coincidentally, that's when our MMA, our broker contract, comes up for renewal, right? And so I believe, without having it right in front of me, I believe that we have a standard 1 year with 4 renewals with them, but we had a rate lock for 3 years. So next month, we'll find out whether the rate's going to change, even though we have 2 renewals left on MMA. But point being that MMA contract resolution should almost take the place of, not take the place of this. This will still always come to you all, but as far as the renewal language in here, the MMA will be what we come to you for, the renewals for. This will just come to you and say, here's what whoever our broker is, here's what they proposed. Are you okay with it? Does that make sense? I know that that's kind of a word salad and not the way that we normally do it. It just didn't make sense the old way, because if we were to say we're going to, you know, all right, now they're all exhausted, we're going to go out to bid, it really doesn't mean anything because MMA's. So we would almost be going behind them when we're already paying them to then negotiate with different carriers who also we know don't want us. So,
What was the original quote they gave us for the increase? Is it
the original
12%?
was 13 to 14%. And that was what MMA had done, was they had come up to us a few weeks ago and said that if we were to lock in early, I guess that's what, again, it's not completely my wheelhouse, but I guess large carriers like Anthem, if you lock in with them early, they'll give you a little bit of a benefit to doing that. And so that's why normally you would see this maybe at the November board meeting, and now you're seeing it early, is because we said, let's just lock in now, we'll do 5% instead of the projected 13 to 14. And again, looking at this table of the high cost claimants, we don't know if in the next few months to close out the year, maybe that skyrockets up. And then it's, and seeing that there's really hardly any competition for us to go to, it also puts us in a position where we probably don't have a ton of leverage. It doesn't mean we just accept whatever they propose to us, but it definitely, I think, means that 5% is almost like jump on it in this type of scenario. But
Thank you.
yeah.
Appreciate it. And we're glad you locked in quickly so that we get to 5%. versus the 12-13.
And I'll add that if we, as always upselling, if we allow them to bundle our vision and our dental with Anthem, where they're currently, I believe, with Humana and Delta Dental, that would drive that down a little bit more. So it might be 4 or 3%. So, but only if it's cheaper, right? The actual coverage. If not, then it probably doesn't matter. But
Are you all gonna look into that or?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's only because we're doing this so early that we don't have the full picture yet. We just wanted to lock this rate because the other thing that, just as a caveat, I'll add to all of this is these other programs that come with this kind of cost savings measure that for our insurance. There's a waiver program that we're also looking into doing this year, which essentially is saying that any of our participants can join their spouses. If they have a spouse that has a plan, they can join their plan, get off of our plan, and then we would agree to, let's just call it $7,000 of any of their out-of-pocket expenses for their spouse's plan. We would cover it. And the reason that works is because for us, the person that's going to leave that we're going to actually have to pay the $7 because it's only reimbursable. If we pay them a $7, that means they were going to have a lot of expenses and now they're off of our plan, right? If they don't have them, we wouldn't have paid anything. We actually want them to stay on our plan. So that's one of those scenarios. It's, I believe the company's called Helia, but we'll probably bring that to you maybe in the next few months. That's one of the rare, I think, circumstances where it works out for both the employer, the vendor, and the employee, that if you do what's best for you, everybody kind of wins, right? If you go to your spouse's plan and it's a good plan, then if you're going to hit that maximum, we're covering the entire cash amount for you. And it helps us because that means you spent a lot and you're not on our plan. So. Oh, really? I'd be interested to hear how that's going, because we kind of toyed around with this idea for the last. Yeah. Yeah. If you end up spending the money, then it was a good thing, right?
I do think that premium increase is like a rate development sheet.
I believe they did, and I could pull that. I could send that over.
I'm just curious to see the math, to how to get, this is what I did.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I'm just curious at the math. I do think that the increase is reasonable. I would like to see the rate development sheet just to kind of look at it, to see the math behind that. Also, I was looking at the letter. Where is the HMO plan offered?
Yep, I asked them the same thing. So that was actually, I believe our broker said that was a EPO, but it was because that high cost claimant has been on our plans back when it was an HMO and it just wasn't updated that day.
Okay.
So the number is updated for the rolling 12 months.
Okay.
But because it's going back 12 months, it's actually going back, including some of the averages from when it was an HMO.
Okay.
And that's why it just didn't get updated.
Gotcha.
So I was almost gonna, if I knew that before I talked to him, then I would have redacted that out too, to not to confuse anybody, but good eye. Yeah, I saw that this morning too.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? All right, we're ready for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Resolution 5E is now approved. Thank you so very much. Now we're going to go on with our executive director. She's going to give us a board briefing.
Great, thank you. What we're going to walk through today is the contents of the draft progress report. Shane already gave her feedback. She got an advance copy, so she can go. But we printed for you all a draft of our 2026 progress report. We've foreshadowed that this was coming. So I'm going to walk through kind of what's included in here. I invite you all to take a look at it. It looks thick, but it's really a lot of pictures and charts and infographics. And then if you have feedback before we finalize the report, we'd like to release this publicly, send it out to partners, make sure HUD gets a copy. This is an update to the strategic plan that we released last year. We want to make sure that we're updating folks on how things are going so that we can continue to be transparent and held accountable for what we say we're going to do. So that's what's in this report. It's broken into 3 chapters. We talk about, we pat ourselves on the back a little bit. We talk about what we've accomplished since the release of our strategic plan. Then we acknowledge our ongoing challenges, and then we move forward to our priorities for the coming year. Just a reminder of how big LMHA is, how consequential the work that we do is. You all know we deploy about $200 million in federal grants every year. We have nearly 3,000 affordable units under our purview, including 4 mixed income communities. We have over 2,000 landlord partners. Many of those are smaller landlords as well. We employ 290 people full-time, and we have about 12,000 rental assistance vouchers. So this is a very large economic engine that you all are helping to steward. So we really wanted to make sure to highlight our housing redevelopment work that we've made tremendous progress on. You all know that we successfully completed the relocation of all residents from Dosker Manor. We completed the Beecher Terrace Choice Neighborhoods Initiative. We've begun progress, as you just voted on today, at Avenue Plaza for that major rehab. We will soon open Iroquois Senior Living, a 60-unit facility that I think you all saw at last year's board retreat. So it'll be fun to come back together when it's totally open. And I think it was just a couple weeks ago, maybe last month, that we released the Parkway Place Community Action Plan. So we've done a lot of work in planning for our redevelopments. For our public housing properties, we've actually seen $1 million reduction in tenant arrears. That's something that we've talked to you all about a lot since I started. We have 228 fewer households who are in arrears with us. In addition to that property management success, we've also increased our property inspection scores under the HUD Inspire regime. So yes, all good news there. Obviously, still much more work to do. We've talked about this a lot too. We learned so much from the Dosker relocation, both in terms of the services that people needed while they were there and the services that were so helpful as folks were transitioning out of Dosker. So as you know, we have brought our resident services coordinators to many of our sites, including Avenue, Parkway, St. Catherine Court, Lord's Hall, and Wilsey Plaza. And some of the folks that are stationed at those sites also go out to our scatter sites, like our larger scatter sites, to host events and bring in resources. So that's another portfolio stabilization strategy. I'll also highlight our financial stewardship. You guys have heard a lot today just in how we're better managing our contracts, making sure that we're getting, the biggest bang for our buck. And Mr. Pusateri, you've been very helpful to us in that journey as we've looked to be better stewards on those contracts. And then the office move that we completed, it feels like now we've been here forever, but when we released the strategic plan, we said we were going to move, and now we've completed the move, which was a big operational efficiency. The challenges that we think are our biggest headwinds, so we highlighted in the draft report, is obviously federal funding, which is very uncertain. And we are also seeing a lot of policy changes come from HUD that we are constantly having to adapt to. The second is that we have low occupancy rates in our public housing sites. We have a vacancy rate of about 13.7%. That is very high, especially when we have such a shortage of affordable housing in the city. And the financial pressures that we face go above and beyond the current federal fiscal climate. We really have to control our costs, and we need to diversify our revenues. And we've talked a lot too about the need for culture change, because we have to modernize our agency, which means that we have to change our knowledge, behaviors, and attitudes of all of our staff, all of our teams. So we launched a culture code earlier this year called One Mission, Stronger Together, that outlines behaviors that we want to see all of our staff, abide by. We launched the Would I Live Here campaign. We performed maintenance blitzes. We launched the Keep It Clean anti-litter campaign on our sites. Instead of just doing a traditional employee picnic this year, we paired that with the day of service. And we have ongoing training to improve process improvements and also build the sense of teamwork. So that's both an accomplishment, but also a huge ongoing challenge. We have talked before about our top priorities for 2026-27. So this is all a reminder for you all that we want to achieve a balanced budget by fiscal year 29. We want to stabilize our housing portfolio, which means a 96% occupancy and 90% rent collection by December of 2027. Also by December of 2027, we will have plans. This doesn't mean they will be completed, but we will have plans for how we want to approach the repositioning of our portfolio. And third, we want to increase resident opportunities in the family self-sufficiency and resident opportunity for self-sufficiency program. One thing I'll highlight that's definitely included in the report and that you will definitely hear more about. You might remember a couple months ago, we announced that we received $500,000 from Louisville Metro government to help create a housing finance function at LMHA. So we are talking about that in the report. That is a way for us to both stabilize our portfolio because it allows us to harness our statutory authority to issue bonds so that we can stabilize our own portfolio, help increase the supply of affordable housing throughout the city. But it also helps us generate revenues so that we can diversify how we get our funds. So much more to come on that. And that's really it. This report kind of puts what we talk about at these board meetings and in these briefings all in one place for the general public. So please do take a look at it and shoot me a note if you see something that you'd like to see included or edited or changed, or if you just want to say, great job, we accept that feedback also. That's all I have for today. Any questions?
Love to say
Okay.
great job. No, this is good. Thank you so much for that. At this time, we're going to ask for a motion to not go into executive session. So we're going to ask for a motion to dismiss this meeting. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All right, the motion is second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting is now adjourned. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you all.